My name's Anna Aspinall, and I'm the Senior Lead Programme Development and Delivery here at Create New South Wales. This webinar has been developed to assist you with your application to the 2026 Creative Steps funding round. The webinar will cover the purpose of Creative Steps and what types of projects the programme supports, the Arts and Cultural Funding Programme's strategic priority areas, the key dates and funding criteria, who is eligible to apply, the assessment criteria and how the questions in the application form can help you to address the criteria, and finally, some general tips on completing your application and where you can get extra support. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands we're joining from today and pay my respects to elders past and present and our First Nations colleagues here at Create New South Wales who generously share their knowledge with us. We recognise the ongoing cultural knowledge, leadership and creativity of First Nations communities across New South Wales and the vital role First Nations artists play in our cultural life. The purpose of the Creative Steps funding programme is to support the creative development and presentation of new creative work by New South Wales artists and cultural workers. The programme enables artists to explore, experiment, and create new work while building skills, connecting with communities, and contributing to a vibrant and diverse New South Wales arts sector. Please note that there are 3 other project funding streams in this round, so make sure you're applying to the programme that best suits your project. As well as Creative Steps, the other programmes are Creative Nations for First Nations-led organisations and individuals, Next Steps for individuals seeking funding for a planned programme of professional development, and Cultural Access that supports projects by individuals and organisations who identify with one of the strategic priority areas that will be shown on the next slide, or have a project that will deliver outcomes for one of the strategic priority areas. You can find additional information about those programs on the resource and funding information pages on the Create New South Wales website. Funding for Creative Steps could enable the development, creation and presentation of new work, provide access to resources and expertise for artists and arts and cultural workers to enhance or develop skills and grow their career. It could facilitate engagement with and access to new work for New South Wales audiences, strengthen the creative ecosystem through collaborations and partnerships. It could amplify diverse voices and increase equitable opportunities for New South Wales artists and arts and cultural workers from strategic priority areas. And it could contribute to personal and community well-being and economic development. There are 6 priority areas for the Arts and Cultural Funding Programme. You can find a full definition and information on each of these in the ACFP glossary, but here's a quick rundown. First Nations stories and communities. This priority is about amplifying the central role of First Nations in our arts and cultural ecology. Broad and inclusive communities and content. Broad and inclusive communities refers to the wide diversity of New South Wales people, and this may include First Nations communities, people of non-English speaking background, those from cultural and linguistically diverse communities, and those who identify as part of the LGBTQIA+ community. It can also refer to the unique communities in our regions and urban environments. Broad and inclusive content refers to the wide range of artistic practice and form, from traditional art forms to new and experimental. Accessibility and equity. Accessibility and equity refer to the inclusion of people with disability or who are D-deaf. When considering equity, you may wish to include areas of accessibility like physical, financial, economic, and social, to ensure there are as few barriers as possible to engagement with your project. Western Sydney and/or regional New South Wales. Western Sydney is the 13 local government areas bounded by the Hills Shire to the north, Wallandilly Shire to the south, Blue Mountain City to the west, and the City of Canterbury Bankstown to the east. Regional New South Wales is defined as the areas outside Greater Sydney. And next generation of creatives and audiences. This includes young people aged between 18 to 25, as well as emerging artists and arts and cultural workers who are generally in the first 5 years of their creative practice or profession, regardless of their age. Dates and funding. Individuals and groups can apply for Creative Steps New Work grants between $10,000 and $75,000. Remember that as an individual applicant, you might wish to consider or engage a funds administrator, or otherwise known as an auspicer, to help you manage the financial side of your grant. Applications open on the 13th of April 2026 and close on the 25th of May 2026 at 2 p.m. Please note that the Smarty Grants portal closes at exactly 2 p.m. Projects must start after the 1st of September 2026 and be completed by the 31st of December 2027. Co-contribution. You must provide a contribution of at least 10% of the expenses of your project. This can be in cash from other grants, earned income such as box office or fees, or donations. Or it can be the provision of in-kind support, such as the use of a venue. Applicants must be aged 18 years or over and have lived in New South Wales for at least 12 months. Applicants must also hold an ABN as a sole trader or via a company where the individual is the sole director, or have an auspice or funds administrator arrangement in place. Unincorporated groups, that is, groups without legal status, may apply through a lead applicant. In these cases, the majority of members must have lived in New South Wales for the past 12 months, and the group must have a written agreement that sets out roles and responsibilities and their acceptance of the proposed project. Other requirements. You can only make one application across this funding round. This means you can apply to only one of the following: Next Steps for professional development, Creative Steps New Work, Creative Nations, or Cultural Access. If you're an organisation with legal status, you cannot apply. This includes companies, formal partnerships, associations, and local government authorities. If you're an organisation with legal status, you may be able to apply to Cultural Access subject to eligibility. And you must contribute income of at least 10% of your total expenses in cash or in kind, and your budget must break even. So what are some of the expenses you can apply for? You should show in your budget all of the costs associated with delivering your project. You might choose to group these expenses together into the following areas: artist and arts worker fees at appropriate industry rates. Your application should demonstrate fair payment for artists and arts and cultural workers that is aligned with recognised awards, guidelines, and industry standards. A list of links to industry rates can be found in the ACFP glossary. And also note, if you're hiring musicians, any events or activities receiving funding from Create New South Wales must pay at least $250 fee per musician. And this fee is based on a 3-hour call as set out in the Live Performance Award and endorsed by the Fair Work Ombudsman. Don't forget to pay yourself as the lead applicant to administer the project. You should also include superannuation on any wages or fees that you pay, and be mindful of any other on-costs, such as loadings and workers' compensations that may be required under any relevant awards. There's further information on this in the frequently asked questions on the resources page. Venue or space hire. This will include the costs to hire spaces for creating, rehearsing, presenting, or engaging communities in your project. Remember, some of these you may be able to get in kind. Travel and accommodation. Transport and accommodation needed to deliver the project, including travel for artists, mentors, or communities. Mentorships and workshops. Costs for skills sharing, learning, and professional development through mentors, workshops, or facilitated sessions. And remember, if your project is really about professional development, you should apply to the Next Steps funding program. Materials. This includes materials and consumables required to create, develop, or present the artistic work. Marketing and promotion. You could include costs to promote the project, reach audiences, and share outcomes, including design, printing, and digital promotion. And administration directly related to the project. So these may include the costs to administer the grant, such as any insurances, accounting fees, or costs associated with any auspicing arrangement, or project management and coordination fees that must be directly linked to delivering the funded activity. Accessibility costs. These could be any costs that remove barriers so that all people, including people with disability or who are DDEF, can participate, such as Auslan, captioning, access support, or access equipment. And it's worth noting that you could include the cost of childcare for the artist or arts worker to participate in the activity. And First Nations protocols and ISIP costs. These are any expenses that will enable you to respect cultural protocols and protect Indigenous cultural and intellectual property. They might include costs associated with community consultations or fees for elders and cultural advice. It's important to remember that your application to Creative Steps is assessed against the 3 assessment criteria for this program. How your application meets the assessment criteria is what the Artform Board assessors are looking for. Each criteria makes up a percentage of your total score, and they are the idea at 50% of your score, which considers the clarity of your project's vision, aims, and purpose, its significance and relevance to your art form, how it supports your artistic skills and career development, and its potential economic contribution, for example, developing new markets or supporting a more sustainable practice. Diversity, participation, and connection to place at 25% of your score. This considers who the project is for and who will benefit, how it supports inclusion and equitable access, how it aligns with New South Wales strategic priority areas, and the strength of the project's connection to place, including appropriate First Nations engagement where relevant, and planning, experience, and financial management for the remaining 25% of your score. And this looks at how well the activity is planned and sequenced, whether the people involved have the right expertise to deliver the project, and whether the budget is realistic and well considered. The questions in the application form are designed to help you address each of the criteria, and it's a good idea to remind yourself when you're answering the question, am I addressing the criteria? Let's start with the idea. First criteria is idea and is worth 50% of your application. In this section, describe what you want to do, why you want to do it, and what you expect the results to be. Remember that the purpose of Creative Steps funding is to support the development, creation, and presentation of new work, supporting New South Wales artists and cultural workers to explore, experiment, and create new work while building skills, connecting with communities, and contributing to a vibrant and diverse New South Wales arts sector. So the strongest applications will be able to clearly articulate the strengths and impact of their project in these areas using examples and evidence where you can. Start by describing your project, clearly summarising what the activity is. What do you want to achieve? How is the project important to your practice or area of work? Is it likely to impact your career or skill development, or build your networks, a new market for your work, or a more sustainable arts practice? Have you considered whether the expected benefits or outcomes of the activity are reasonable and relative when compared to the scope and scale of the project? The strongest applications will clearly articulate the planned impact or change resulting from the project with a compelling reason for doing it now. The second assessment criteria is diversity, participation, and connection to place, and it makes up 25% of your score. There are 2 questions to help you address this criteria. Question 2. Who is the project for and who will benefit from it? In answering this question, you might want to consider the following. Who is the project relevant to? Who will it benefit? For example, artists, communities, and/or audiences. What results do you want to see at the completion of your project? Does the project engage with or involve any of the strategic priority areas? Will your project increase access and participation in arts and cultural experiences? And question 3 is, why is this the right place for the project? And how is it connected to the local community or environment? Think about why the proposed location of your project is important to the community or people where it is happening. You might want to consider, where will the project take place? Why did you choose this location or locations? Have you engaged with the local community, and do they support the activity? How is the project meaningfully connected to the place where it will happen? And in this context, place refers to a specific location or environment that holds personal, emotional, spiritual, or cultural significance to a non-First Nations individual or community. If your project does engage with or is led by First Nations peoples, you should outline how you are connecting with First Nations communities. What connections have you already established? How do you understand and use the protocols for First Nations engagement and ISIP? And you can find additional information about connection to place statement from a link in the guidelines or on the Create New South Wales website. If you are successful and your project engages with First Nations communities, you may be asked to provide a cultural art form affirmation statement or your approach to Aboriginal protocols and ISIP. The third assessment criteria is planning, experience, and financial management, and it makes up 25% of your score. Your project budget and responses to these 2 questions will help you address the criteria. In this section of your application, you can show your project planning, who will be involved, and how you will manage any risks, including financial risks. To address the criteria, you need to provide a break-even budget breakdown. A break-even budget is where your income matches your expenditure. Your budget should include all the income that you may generate from your project, such as tickets, entry fees, any other grants, such as from local government or Creative Australia, in-kind services and goods, as well as all the expenditure related to your project, such as wages and fees, venue costs, and costs associated with delivery of the project, such as administration costs. And question 4 is about planning. You might like to consider a timeline for the delivery of your project by breaking up the whole project into a series of deliverable bits. You could also outline the roles of any delivery partners and their responsibilities. You should outline what activities you will undertake to deliver the results you described in the idea section. Consider why the outlined activities are appropriate for the project. Are they sequenced at the right time with the right people to achieve the project goals? In your answer to question 5, you should briefly outline who else is involved in the delivery of your project and why they are the right people. You can always add fuller information about your team members as support material. You should articulate why your collaborators have the right creative or technical skills that are relevant, significant to the art form or area of practice for your project. And for the budget, you should outline the costs involved to deliver your project. We strongly recommend you provide a detailed breakdown of your income and expenses. When creating your budget, think about the following. Have you included all the costs involved to deliver your project? Is the budget realistic for what you want to do? Have you included adequate wages and fees to pay the artists, arts and cultural workers, and/or community involved in the project? Have you calculated and included any in-kind contributions? Have you included costs for community consultation or engagement? For example, if First Nations artists, cultural workers, elders, or communities are involved, there may be expenses related to First Nations protocols and ISIP. Include any expenses related to accessibility and inclusion, for example, marketing materials, Auslan interpretation, or access adjustments for participants or audiences with disability or who are D-deaf. Add budget notes if you want to explain any particular items in more detail or provide more information. And remember, you must provide at least a 10% contribution, either in cash or in kind, and that individuals and groups can apply for funding from $10,000 up to $75,000. Applications are assessed by the art form board you select in your application. There are 10 Create New South Wales art form boards with up to 20 members on each board. Art form board members include professional artists, producers, cultural workers, and leaders from across the sector. The art form boards assess all applications to the Arts and Cultural Funding Programme. Further information about art form boards and the specific art forms that each board supports can be found in the art form board FAQs. Note that individuals and groups are assessed separately from organisations in this round. Art form board members will score each application based on the assessment criteria. Assessment meetings are then held for each board to come together and determine final application rankings and recommendations. Create New South Wales finalises those recommendations with the number of applications by art form, the available budget, the geographical distribution of the highest ranking applications, and the strategic priority areas. Final recommendations are presented to the Minister for the Arts, who is the final decision maker. Applicants are encouraged to read the guidelines thoroughly before starting an application. Read the frequently asked questions on the resources page we'll share in a moment. The FAQs will be updated continuously with answers to common questions throughout the application open period. Save your progress regularly in Smarty Grants. Prepare uploads and supporting documents early. Make sure any support materials you choose to upload are directly relevant to the application. For example, a group's signed collaboration agreement or an invitation from a community group to partner in developing a presentation or workshop. Leave plenty of time to submit before the deadline, which is 2 p.m. on the 25th of May 2026. And some application tips. Make sure you address the criteria when answering each question. Answer each question using clear, plain language. Ask someone who doesn't know about your project if what you've written is clear. Consider downloading a PDF of the application form and complete your answers in a Word document. Don't rely on AI to provide the answers for your application. Check all the available resources, especially the FAQs and the glossary, as they're updated on a regular basis. Prepare early and submit early. Access supports are available on request, including a Word version of the application form, translation support, dictation support, option to answer questions using audio or video, and the National Relay Service, available for applicants who are deaf or hard of hearing. And if you need additional help, Create New South Wales staff can provide information on the guidelines, but remember we cannot provide feedback on draft applications or your project. If you have a question, please check the online resources posted at nsw.gov.au/ACFP. This is your one-stop shop to find everything related to this program, including information on all of the ACFP project funding rounds, FAQs, glossary of definitions and common terms, webinar recordings for each program, and information on the art form boards. Thank you for listening to this presentation. We encourage you to read the guidelines carefully, start preparing early, and reach out for assistance if needed. And all the best with your application.